Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. And we just wanted to show you our old vines and just explain a little bit the history behind Domaine Jones. So I'm just going to turn the camera around now, and we're just literally, we are in a vineyard here, and this is our 110-year-old Carignan. So these vines are 110 years old. And all of the plots, Domaine Jones, for those of you who don't know, Domaine Jones were based between the towns of Narbonne and Perpignan and Carcassonne. So we really are sort of in the middle of nowhere. Touchon is just 800 people. But before the light fades, I wanted to show you, look at this. This is what our wines are all about. This is a bunch of Carignan on a 110-year-old vine. So can you see down here the lovely gnarled trunk? And also you can see it's planted and pruned as a gobelet, so it's not on wires at all. And just to show you, the yields are really small. So I don't know if you can make it out here, but the bunches on here, you can see they're all sort of hanging bunch by bunch. So they're not like clumped up together in the middle. They're just nicely spaced out around. And here's another one. Here's, you can see it better here. So this is the old vine, 110 years old. And then if I look from the aerial view, this is why it's called gobelet, because you've got like a circle of grapes around the outside, and it means the yields are really, really low. So people in the village laugh at us because our yields make 1 bottle per vine compared to about 3 or 4 if you really push the grapes. But we're organic, so we plough everything, and these vines are planted a horse width apart. So these would be planted to be able to get a horse down here to actually plough. And because we're organic, so we now need to plough. We haven't got a horse there, we've got a little tractor. But while we were here, we thought you might be interested, because for me these look like quite ripe, and you might be thinking, well, when are you actually going to pick these grapes? So I've got Jean-Marc's the vineyard specialist and we just thought we'd show you how we can tell if the grapes are ripe or not. Donc pour moi, Jean-Marc, ça a l'air bien. Oui, c'est mûr, non?
Oui, mais tout n'est pas au même niveau. Il y a des grappes qui sont plus en retard.
So I showed you a nice pretty bunch that was ready, but if you look just the bunch next door, can you see there's still some green grapes in there that aren't ripe yet? So this one definitely not ripe. But if we let's take just one.
On voit que la couleur là n'est pas complètement noire.
And so the colour, it's not completely black yet, still a bit pinky on the top. Going to peel the grape. And you notice, I'm sure all of you know, but all grapes, or 99%, it's white flesh in the middle. So all the colour comes from the outside. Oh, and the colour's starting to come out of the skins. And now what we're trying to look at are the pips inside. It's quite frightening actually, because we were thinking it's not going to be ripe, and we get in and basically the pips have to be brown. And last week we looked and they were definitely green, and they're brown.
Ouais, ça avance, la maturité.
Yeah, so we're getting there.
And Katie, there's the written question here. Someone's asking, how long will these old vines be able to produce grapes?
I'll just show you this. There's the green. So that one's not ripe. So to reply to your question, it's that, you know, if only we knew how long these vines were going to carry on producing, because they're 110 years old already. But you can see, I mean, they just look so healthy, and there's hardly any, they call them manquants, so there's hardly any vines missing in the vine either. So I think if we look after them carefully, the oldest vine in the UK is actually 400 years old. So if they just live another, I don't know, 10, 20 years, then that will be fine for what we want to do, because we only have old vines here at Domaine Jones, so it's all exclusively old vines. Il demandait combien de temps ça dure. But it really depends on how many grapes they've produced over the years, what grape variety it is, what the soil is like. Because if you see the soil here, it's so poor and sort of infertile, so they don't overproduce the grapes, the vine. So they've had
Si on les entretient bien, ça va durer. Mais...
We're being very vague about this question because there's not a specific date to say, well, these are going to last this long. There are older, il y a des vignes plus vieilles dans le village ou...
Non, ça fait partie des vignes les plus vieilles parce que ça a été replanté juste après le phylloxéra.
So this was planted just after phylloxera. So this is actually one of the oldest vineyards in the in Touchon, actually. And we, as I mentioned, we just have old vines at Touchon. So we've got 15 very small parcels of vines in Domaine Jones. So we've got 15 plots, little bit like this one. But what we wanted to show you as well is that when you buy Carignan, so this is our Carignan vineyard, but we also get white grapes and different things actually in the vineyard. So just show you du blanc.
Là, par exemple, il y a... Oui,
So it's not all the same grape variety, although it's majority. So if we look into this one, are you familiar with the Grenache Gris grape? So this is the Grenache Gris, and you can see they're lovely. They do look quite grey, but it's actually a lovely pinky colour. So you may have heard of Grenache Noir and probably Grenache Blanc, and this is the Grenache Gris variation. So that's in our Carignan vineyard. And just next door, lo and behold, we've got white grapes here. So this is white Grenache. So it tends to be quite a mixture, but because we hand pick absolutely everything at Domaine Jones, it means that we will come in first and pick the white grapes, and then we'll come back in and pick the red grapes a couple of weeks later. So we will go into each vineyard. This one we go in twice. There's some more white grapes here. Et si tu vois les sangliers aussi. I get a bit scared now because it's like wild boar time of evening. That's our biggest pest here, a wild boar. Ooh, just lost my husband. And wild boar will come in and they nibble the grapes. Oh, here. And this is a Grenache. So even on the reds, this is a Grenache Noir. How do you know it's a Grenache Noir? Comment tu le sais? They all look the same to me.
Avec les feuilles.
So with Jean-Marc can tell by the leaf, the shape of the leaves.
Là, si on prend une feuille de Grenache,
so this is Grenache.
Forme assez ronde.
So it's quite a round. If you flatten it out, it's like a plate. It's a nice round shape. So that's Grenache.
Au-dessous, il n'y a pas de duvet.
And it's nice and there's no hairs on the back of the leaf.
Si on prend,
and then if we compare it to a Carignan. So there's a Carignan, a typical Carignan leaf. So you can see it's a lot more indented. You've got 5 distinct lobes. Compare it with the Grenache and then compare it with the Carignan. So 5 distinct lobes.
La surface n'est pas lisse comme le Carignan. La surface est gaufrée.
And the top of the leaf is quite bobbly. So it's embossed rather than flat and waxy. And little tiny hairs.
Là, sur cette feuille, on voit juste un petit duvet. Certaines fois, voilà.
Little tiny hairs on the back. So a big mixture. So what we do with our pickers is we ask them to pick the white grapes first, and then on the red grapes, it's really difficult when you're picking to actually tell the difference between a Carignan and a Grenache. So we can't ask the pickers to do that. So they pick all the reds together, but it's majority Carignan in this vineyard.
Environ 80%. Dans les rouges, à peu près 80% de Carignan.
So about 80% of Carignan in this particular 110-year-old vineyard. And just show you the view over there in the distance. It's quite a strange day today. It's been quite cloudy. It's still about 30 degrees, so it's nice and hot. Just behind that rock, the cliffs in the background are the beaches of the Mediterranean. So we're about an hour from the beaches of Le Cat, La Palme, and the village of Fitou. So we're going to talk about Fitou in a minute when we taste the wine, but the actual village of Fitou is about an hour over there where the Mediterranean is. And then you've got the Chateau d'Aguila. For those who came to see us, you may have popped in. It's not that house in the forefront, it's in the background. You might just be able to pick out the wonderful Cathar castle, the Chateau d'Aguila. Right, are we ready to get in the Diane, do you think?
Ready.
Ready? Okay, right, here we go. So this is a bit of a first here. We are going to try and take you with us down to the winery, which is actually on the other side of the village. So we're going to drive through the village. And for me, you know, my wines are all about terroir. They're all about terroir. And terroir for me is like the place a wine comes from. And for me, it's not just the soil and it's not just the sunshine. It's the people, it's the place, it's the village, and it's just everything about this place. So I just thought it'd be really nice if I could just show you some of the highlights of the village of Touchon on the way down to the winery. So here's Diane. Let's hope Diane's going to start for us because she is a bit temperamental. I'm going in the passenger seat with all of you. For those of you who don't know, that's the gear stick here. So it's like headlights on, seatbelt on. Off we go. So I will at some stage just let you enjoy the journey. As you can see, it's a convertible, so we've got a nice view as we go round and down. If the signal cuts out, it's much better actually in the winery, so don't worry, I will like come back. I think, okay, off we go. And watch out for the wild boar. If you spot any wild boar, as I say, wild boar can get into our vineyards and they can actually nibble the grapes at this time of year. So they're our biggest pest. And we normally have electric fences around the vineyards to keep them out. So Touchon is just 800 people, tiny little village, but it's actually the main town in this whole area. So 800 people. We have a doctors, a dentist, and we actually have 4 butchers, I think, at the last count. So yes, if you want questions, you're asking how to ask questions, please. There's a question box. So the village of Touchon, and now going down into the centre of town. How much yield do we lose to wild boar? I just picked up that question, Michael, so I can answer that one. It depends on the vineyard, but on average it's about 15 to 20%, but it can be 100% if it's muscat, as I found out, because I had some lovely sweet muscat grapes ripening in one of my vineyards in Moree in the other valley, and we went in to put the electric fence up, but the wild boar beat us to it, and they got in there the night before, and they'd absolutely devastated the whole vineyard. They'd just taken, they'd nibbled, eaten, and they sort of hoover the grapes up, and there was nothing left at all. So just mention this, the highlight of the village in a minute is the bar. So just coming around the corner, I'm going to put this sneakily here. Oh, it's closed. Well, that sums it up really. That's Touchon. This is the bar here. This is a lively Sunday evening. Touchon, very so lovely and southern French. I've been here for like 25 years now, over 25 years, and I'm from Leicester in the UK originally. I just fell in love with this place, just absolutely love it. So the main street of Touchon, and now we have basically driven through Touchon. So I hope you enjoyed that little trip. There's a cash machine here and a bank. We do have a municipal swimming pool too.
How old is Diane?
How old is Diane? Diane is 40 years old. She's probably one of the most reliable cars I've ever had. And here we are at the station. So there used to be a little train that came up to Touchon. It finished in 1935. And this is the train shed, because Toucham was surprisingly the end of the line. And this was the train shed where the little steam trains used to overnight here. And this is what we bought in 2013 and converted it into our little winery for Domaine Jones. This evening we're focalizing, is that a word? Focusing, that's better, on Domaine Jones. But as you know, my husband Jean-Marc also has his domain, which is Domaine Jean-Marc Astric, and there's a couple of wines in the offering, but we've done a his and a her. Oof, we made it. Thanks, Diane. I hope you enjoyed the little ride in the Diane. So this is the station, the train shed winery, and then very importantly, let's have a look. So it's a nice time to see the winery. It's quite satisfying for us because it's completely empty. It's completely empty because we've bottled everything. I think we've got a couple of barrels left and one tiny little vat left to bottle, and then that's it. But here, just you can see it's just a lovely volume building. These are the original beams. They were black when we bought the building. We had to painted them white, we insulated. And then here you can see we've got lots of little tiny stainless steel vats. So the tiny stainless steel vats, that's because each of our 15 vineyards has a vat to itself. So we make everything separately. So everything goes into its own vat. Each vineyard has its own vat. And then we will separate out the grape varieties as well. Right, I think it's time for a drink. What time is it in Canada? I suppose, are you on different time zones? But
all across. In Ontario, it's 3:15 in the afternoon.
3 in the afternoon, that's about the right time for a drink,
yeah.
Isn't it?
And noonish out west, which is still a good time for a drink. And
okay.
and a little later over in Atlantic Canada, where it's a great time for a drink.
Excellent. So this is the wine that we are going to taste with you this evening. I saw some of you actually had the same one. We're tasting the 17 vintage from last year's offering, and there's the 18 vintage in this year's offering, and it's Jones Fitu. So ours is a 2017. Here. Right, let's have a taste. So I can take you through the tasting as well. So first of all, I'm sure you're all used to tasting, but just to refresh our memories. So what I tend to do, everybody has a different technique for tasting, but what we tend to do is we have just a little sniff from it without swirling the air around. And then we swirl with a nice white shirt, that's daring, de la chemise blanche. We swirl around and then take another sniff. And this time the flavor's much more powerful, much more upfront and really coming out. This bottle, I don't know when you opened your bottles, we opened our bottle yesterday, and it really does benefit actually from being opened either the day before, or you can decant the wine as well. And when I say decant, you don't have to have a posh decanter. You can just tip it into a jug and then tip it back into the wine bottle, and that really helps open it. But right, let's have a taste. And in a minute, when I've got my hands free, I'll come back so I can actually see you, or you can see me. But
I'm not sure yet. She might be able to. Okay. Lost the connection, but
Can you still hear us, Katie? Oh, we may have lost Katie. We will try and get her back.
she's coming back. There's Michael.
Yeah.
oh, can you hear me now? I'm back.
There, you're back. Yay.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that. I think it was the switch between the Wi-Fi and my telephone. So really sorry. I must have been just on the border. Can you hear me okay there or not?
Yes, I think we're all set, and we can see down the lane of your vats as well. Oh, have we lost her again?
I don't see her.
This worked when we tried it, guys. So just bear with us. She'll be back, I'm sure of it. I should have had some jokes ready to tell while we waited. And Neil and Ellen, I'll get that the boar question in when we get her back, but I didn't want to interrupt the tasting bit.
She actually answered it, Michael.
Oh, she did. Okay.
Yeah, she read it and answered it while they were driving over to the winery.
Excellent. Okay. Do you know any jokes, Neil?
No.
No. They must be resetting their router. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. I'm actually drinking the Grenache Noir. Oh, you're back?
Yeah, we're back. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I really don't know what it is. We have got a backup system, so I've got my computer here as well if it goes again. So sorry about that, technical. This is Touchant, I'm afraid, so a bit in the middle of nowhere. But yes, we're both back here. And tasting, we've still got the thing. I'll try not to move so that we get the signal. So just going back to the Fitu. It's a 2017. The Fitu this is from last year, but it's still in this offering this year. And Fitu is always a blend of grapes. So Fitu is always Carignan and Grenache, which are the traditional grapes. And also you have to have Syrah or Mourvèdre in the blend as well. So in the one that we're tasting, it's the traditional blend, I'd say, of Carignan, Grenache, and Syrah, 40% Carignan. Remember those old vines that we've just seen? Well, they're the type of vines that go into this Fitu. So the vines are up to 110 years old, really small yields, a bottle per vine. And then we have the Grenache, which is around 80 years old, and the Syrah, which is younger, because that was only introduced into the appellation about 45 years ago. So that's a relative newcomer, the Syrah grape, to our area. But we just feel it adds a bit of sophistication and depth to the traditional blend that we have. Should I just keep going on the, if there's any questions? Right. Oh yes, we were just starting to taste it, weren't we? Can you hear me or not?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So on the tasting, definitely for me, it's herbs. The garrigue, if you know what the garrigue, you've ever smelled the garrigue, that's a local landscape around here, which is full of rosemary and thyme. Rosemary, thyme, and fennel. So you get a definite sort of herb nose, and I get lots of thyme on mine. On the fruits, I get very dark fruits, so dark cherry, definitely black cherry. Plums, and even some damsons, sort of jam as well, damson jam. I remember my mum used to make that. And you've got sort of brambly hedgerow in there too.
I think we may have lost you again, Katie.
Yeah.
Like she said, it's rural France, so it's you take what you can get. Well, one of our staff, Anaïs, who's on the call as well, she was working from France during COVID, and she was always having issues with her high speed when we were having meetings. So.
I'm back. We are back.
Hello,
sorry.
Katie.
Hello. What I've done, I've turned the Wi-Fi off. I think it's a Wi-Fi problem, so we're just on the 4G now. So hopefully, but it's not. Yeah, sorry about that. Tu disais quoi?
Non, qu'on était sur des notes aussi qui étaient de réglisse.
Yeah, sort of licorice in there as well. Definitely licorice and some menthol notes.
Après, c'est gourmand, un peu, c'est un peu chocolaté.
And quite chocolatey. Jean-Marc's picking up chocolate notes, and they're sort of dark chocolate.
And I don't know if you can see the chat, Katie, but there are a couple of questions about the barrel toast.
Okay,
and,
I can't
and how
see
long
it,
in
so.
oak. Yeah, I'll do it for you if I may.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So what toast are you using in the barrels, and what percentage of the wine is has spent time in oak?
Okay, so I'll just come over to the barrel. Attempt to come down here. So here's the barrels. You can see we don't have that many barrels. We've got about 30 barrels altogether. Our total production is 40,000 bottles in total, and for this V2, we age about 30% of it in oak barrel. What we do is we actually make the wines individually in the vats, and then we will age the different grape varieties separately before we blend. And that just means that we have a really big palette of wines to choose from when we actually do come to blend the wine. And then we renew the park every 3 years. So we buy 4 or 5 barrels a year and just keep renewing it slowly. So we do have different ages of barrels. So we do have different ages of barrels as well. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4-year-old barrels. In this particular V2, there is no new oak in the wine at all. So it's just wine barrels of 1, 2, or 3 years age. As Jean-Marc quite rightly pointed out, my maths is terrible. So we renew with about 10 barrels a year, not 4, as I just said. I was thinking of the white barrels. So we renew a third of the park. And on the toast, we always go for quite a delicate toast, so a medium toast, chauffe medium. Medium chauffe or toast on the barrels, because we don't want it to dominate too much. As you can probably tell from this V2 when you're trying it, it's very integrated. The oak is very, you can smell it, you can taste the vanilla, and it just adds softness to the wine rather than adding too much oak flavor to the wines. So and it's, of course, a Frenchman just pointed that out to me, 100% French barrels as well. So all French barrels here.
And I have another question, Katie, about waiting after bottling for the drinking. So these 2019 V2 that are coming into Canada in 6 months or so, how long before we drink them? They'll be drinkable when they arrive, correct? But could also cellar?
They will. It will be the 18 vintage that's coming over. On my V2, and Jean-Marc's is 19, I believe.
Okay.
I think, but in any case, they are V2. Yes, we like it when it's young. So after about a year, we give it 12 months just to settle down, and then it's lovely and smooth. The tannins are very soft tannins, and because we pick the grapes at like full maturity, the grapes are really, I can actually turn this on now. So we pick the grapes at full maturity. So we get lovely ripe flavors. And so it is made to be able to drink early on. Having said that, our first vintage we ever made was 2010. And that is actually drinking beautifully now. So they are wines that can age. I would say optimum's probably about 5 years in the cellar, if you can do that. Having said that, Jean-Marc's V2 is a 19 vintage. His is Herbarium V2, and there's no oak in the wine, so that is made for earlier drinking. That's a V2. The blend, I think it's Carignan and Syrah. Yeah. So it's softer, it's more upfront fruit and ready for drinking earlier. So depending if you want a wine you can lay down or one that you'd like to drink straight away.
So that actually leads well into the next question, which is how friendly the competition is between the two of you. when it comes to herbarium and the Jones Grenache.
No, friendly every day.
Yeah.
Depends.
It depends. Yeah. Yeah, go on.
The best is my wine.
Yeah. Normally the best is Jean-Marc's wine. That's what he thinks. I think because we started with Domaine Jones before we started with Domaine Astric. Domaine Jones started in 2009, so it's now been going. That's quite a long time. Jean-Marc started in 2015. So to begin with, we very much concentrated on Domaine Jones. Jean-Marc previously to that was in the wine cooperative. He also wanted to come out neighbours, and it just became very difficult to stay in the cooperative. So Jean-Marc actually came out of the cooperative in 2015 and started making his wines. So because mine were already established, we decided with Jean-Marc's wine to make wines that complemented the offering that we already had. So Jean-Marc's wines purposely come in as sort of fruitier, easier drinking style, rather than the more gastronomic wines that we have with Domaine Jones. Domaine Jones, I would advise that all of the wines are really to be drunk, apart from the Katie Jones Red, which is a bit lighter, but all of the others are real food wines, whereas Jean-Marc's, they're so soft and fruity that they can also be drunk with lighter food or just as a glass of red wine. Yeah, we did actually want to become complementary.
Yes, and we want a different style and a different vineyard, because the vineyard from Domaine Jones, we work all by hand, we pick all by hand. It's really a lot of work for the Domaine Jones. They work for my domain, but I can use tractor more than for Katie. For Katie is really, the production is very small and all by hand.
What he's saying as well is like I think my domain is so difficult, and I'm just a big romantic. So when I started buying my vineyards, I bought the prettiest little tiny vineyards that I could find with the oldest vines. And that was really before I knew all the hard work that goes into making old vine wines. And Jean-Marc is the man in the vineyard actually now, and he has definitely shown me it's really hard work. And so when Jean-Marc's vines came online, we wanted to do them in a more modern way. So his vines are a little bit younger. They're still 20, 30 years old, but they are actually able to be farmed a lot easier. His are organic as well, but they're much easier to farm than my old vines.
The old vine organic is really difficult because you need to do a lot of things by hand. And,
it's very labor intensive. Old vines and organic here is very labor intensive. I liken my vines, those of you who were with us at the beginning that we went to see the vineyard, but I liken it to like a retirement home for old vines, because we basically buy old vineyards that nobody else really wants because they're not at their peak of production. They're making lower yields and they're really, really labor intensive. But that's what we want at Domaine Jones. We want these old vines. We want the vines that can really just produce a small amount and that are nearing the end of their life cycle, where you get the really, really good grapes. Also, we didn't mention, it's really hot today, but those old vines, their roots go down at least 5, if not 10 meters. So they will always get the water. So even now they're looking lush, the lovely green leaves, and we have very little stress on the old vines.
And there's a question as to, and that is a recipe for a good marriage, I think, what you've just described. So that
I think so.
I think complement one another well.
We do, and also I think what's really worked for us is we don't work in the same winery either. So this is my winery, Domaine Jones. So I'm the boss during the harvest here, and Jean-Marc has his winery where he's the boss in his winery. So that works really well. We don't have any arguments.
It's better.
It's better. Yeah, it's definitely better. And then also in terms of work, Jean-Marc is the man in the vineyard. So whatever he says in the vineyard goes, and I'm on the sales and the marketing. So he listens to me for the sales and marketing, and I listen to him in the vineyard. So the split works really well. Yeah, it's great. It does work really well. Complementary. Definitely.
Excellent segue to where do you sell your wines, given that you're sales and marketing? Is it mainly in France?
Okay, so no, we sell like 99.99% in France. On export markets. We hardly sell anything in France at all, and I don't think we sell like less than 1% on the French market. So we're very much turned towards export markets. That's because mainly because I'm British, and so I love going home and over to the UK, and I tend to do that for pleasure and also to sell the wine. So we have our biggest market is the UK, but we do also have markets in Scandinavia, so Sweden and Denmark, in Germany, Switzerland. We have a bit in the States as well, and we have you lovely guys in Canada doing a fantastic job for us. So yeah, so it's sort of split a bit in Taiwan as well. It's split all over the world, but small amounts sort of all over the world.
Yes, and this year I start with organic wine, and I start selling in France.
Yes,
the organic wine.
That's right, yeah. So Jean-Marc's certified organic this year. So just so there's no confusion, my vineyards are in conversion. So you have a 3-year conversion period before you can actually put certified organic on the label. Jean-Marc was certified organic in this vintage in 2019. So the 2 wines that are coming across are actually certified organic. And because of that, that's opened up new markets for us, which was the idea on the French market too, as well as other Belgium and Canada too. So.
Yeah, and this is just fair comment, is that someone has remarked that 25-year-old vines on Vancouver Island are considered old, and yours are 110.
Yeah,
So.
But no, definitely, and I think it's really interesting because old vine, there's no legal definition of an old vine, and I know down on the plain here near Narbonne, the vines, when they get to about 20 years old, they're so tired because they produce so many grapes in their short lifetime that they are considered as old vines and they're ripped up. Here we have lower yields, where we've got really poor soils, the vines produce less grapes.
Ici, quand on plante une vigne, il faut minimum 4-5 ans avant qu'elle produise.
And here you need at least 4 or 5 years when you plant a vine up here in Touchon before it will start producing grapes. And even it takes, I think you said once, 20 years for the root structure to get established here in Touchon for a vineyard, and the trellising system as well.
And there's a question about how you've been impacted by COVID.
Comment on a été? I tell you, well, when it first happened, I like to think in a way we were very privileged during COVID, because we were always allowed to go out and work the vineyards. So although we were locked down in France and in Touchon, we were allowed to get out and to go and work in the vineyards. And that was just, yeah, brilliant for us, because we could actually get out and work, but also get a breath of fresh air and be out in the countryside. And that's when I started my rambles. I think a few of you might have joined me on my morning rambles. Because we were allowed out, I just thought I'd start filming every morning on Insta Live and do the rambles so that people could see what we were up to and get a sort of taste of France. So from that point of view, it didn't really impact us at all on the work. And also we found that people were drinking a lot more. Now that could just be the UK, but people really started drinking at home. And we have a direct sales website for the UK, and our customers in the UK as well. Their sales just went through the roof. So from a business point of view, we've definitely survived, and we've had a good year because people were sort of trading up as well, wanting to drink a better bottle of wine at home. And apart from that, in terms of working, it is a very solitary work in the vineyard anyway. So you don't, at this time of year, you don't really go out with lots of you in the vineyard. Because we have over 20 vineyards between us, we were able to put workers in different vineyards. So they basically had the whole vineyard to themselves, and they took their own vehicles. We were able to carry on bottling as well. We had the bottling lorries that came down, and they were all followed strict controls with the bottling. Yeah. And as Jean-Marc says, just because we live in the middle of nowhere, I think it was the first time I actually really appreciated living very much in the middle of nowhere with just 800 people around us. And no, we really felt that we were very fortunate, and we have been able to maintain sales through doing lots of social media activity, being really active on videos and Insta Live and Zooms. And for us, it's been great to actually be able to communicate to people what we're doing as well. It's been a good opportunity for us. And fortunately, we stayed healthy as well during that time. Harvest may be a bit more challenging if this second wave comes along, because harvest is going to be in a couple of weeks. They're talking about a second wave or a second peak. That might be a bit more challenging. Yeah, we usually have Spanish workers, and they're not coming this year, just because they could probably get up now, but getting near to the harvest, we're not sure if they were. So we've got pickers from the village. So we've got a nice team of pickers from the village. And then we would just have to be very strict on actually getting people to the vineyards. Working in the winery, again, there's only 2 or 3 people actually in the winery at a time. So that should be in each winery, yeah.
So I'll put 2 together here, because I think you mentioned in passing that your annual production is 40,000 bottles. So that answers Craig's questions. Craig?
Yeah, that's minus 40,000, and Jean-Marc's a potential of 60,000. So between us, we can get up to 100,000.
And how many people does that take? How many do you employ to make that work?
Not enough people, I don't think. It's been like creating Domaine Jones and Domaine Astric has been a lifetime passion, I think, and it has to be for Jean-Marc, like coming out of the cooperative and finally being able to make his own wine and taste the wines from his vineyard, and for me, just the passion with the old vines. So what was the question?
How many people?
So how many people do we employ? So basically for years, it was just myself and Jean-Marc, and then we employed a tractor driver. So we have Michelle who drives the tractor, and we've employed Gilles as well, who's like a general manager, who we were very, very fortunate. He's like highly qualified engineer, and he basically wanted a change in lifestyle and wanted to buy an old ruined house in the middle of the Garrigue and start doing it up.
Yeah, Sebastian.
And we have Sebastian, a Polish guy who's local as well, who does part-time in the vineyards. So we're a small team. There's us 2 and then 2.5 people extra. But with all the COVID and the extra business that we've had, we are actually extending and employing somebody else from November, because we want to get into wine tourism as well. So I know this part of France for me is so undiscovered and quite difficult to discover as well, because it's quite closed and there's not that much tourism going on when you get into the area that we're in, up in the Corbière Mountains. So we're hoping to build a gîte, and we're hoping to actually do the rambles that we were doing virtually on Insta Live, to actually do the rambles now in the vineyards when people come and visit us. So the next chapter.
Yeah, and so actually that had me curious, similar to the other question about how many people, but pickers, you must need a lot more because of the close, the vines are so close to one another, you can't use mechanization, it's all picked by hand. So how many pickers do you need for harvest?
Yeah, so we have a team of about 10 people for the picking, because Jean-Marc's a machine harvested, but those that we saw earlier, you're correct in saying that they are just a horse distance apart, so we can't get a machine in there, and they're also, most of them are on slopes, so there's no way that we can do any machine picking on those. So, but we have a team of about 10 qualified, and I think the word qualified is important when you're picking, because it does seem really easy, but I did give it a go once. I only did it for 1 year, and it's such hard work, it's backbreaking. So if any of you are thinking of doing a bit of picking, we are going to be doing harvest days in the future as well, where people can come and try it out just for the morning and then have a lovely picnic lunch in the vineyard, which is my type of harvesting, I think.
And the next time they come back, they'll have just the picnic, I bet.
Yeah, exactly.
There are more people for the picnic.
Right. That's right. After they've had a chance, I think it's really a romantic idea of being able to do the picking, and then I don't think you have to do it very long before you realize that the drinking is much better.
Definitely. It sounds like you've done some picking, Michael.
It's true. And very little.
Exactly, yeah. It sounds good at the time. But...
Right.
L'idée, c'est de revenir aussi à l'ancien temps, quand les photos avec mes parents avec le cheval, pour recréer une ambiance comme il y avait.
Yeah, because that's what I like you, Michael. I did think it was going to be really very romantic, the harvest, and like we'd have big meals with the evening, and we'd all sit down and have a glass of wine or a bottle of wine, big meals cooked by my mother-in-law, and just have like a really good time. It's not like that, like, because we're such a small team, we haven't been able to do that so far, but we do want to get back to that, to the old times when the harvest was really a celebration of picking meal as well, to really celebrate. And I'm sure we'll have a harvest party as well at some stage. But yeah, we haven't got a horse. I did see a question on that. We don't have a horse yet, and I think the De Chevaux or the Diane is the nearest that we're going to get to a horse, because they are so much work. I didn't realize that either in my romantic head. A horse, to plow in between vines, you have to go up and down 6 times. C'est 6 fois avec un cheval entre les vignes.
Sur des vignes qui sont plantées à 1,50 m.
6 fois. So you have to go up and down in between a vine 6 times with a horse to actually plow it. So it's even more work. So no, I don't think the horse is going to be for this year or next year.
And are you able to see those, Katie? There's some people have been saying that you're on the list for our travel. Do keep us in mind at Opimian, because when things ease up, we're going to reinvigorate our travel programs so that we'll be inviting Opimian members to go and see our producers. I think it's one of the best things about being part of Opimian, other than the drinking, of course. But and someone has mentioned about your accent being very close to Jane Masters. Are you from the same part of England?
Oh, no, but Jane's a really good friend. I think Jane comes from London, and I'm just from 2 hours up from London in Leicester. So not too far away, but not the same place. But I know Jane really well. She used to work for Marks and Spencer's in the UK, and she was... When I first came down here, I worked in the village cooperative, and she was one of the first buyers that I ever met. So that must have been about 25 years ago, basically. So I've known Jane for a long time. But no, same country, but different town.
So in Art, I hope you don't mind that I'm going to morph on your question here a little. He's asking about decanting, and I was really surprised to hear from you that you would suggest opening a bottle the day before, which you don't do anything with it, right? You just open it, you recork it and let it go, or do you leave it open?
Like, do you
leave it uncorked? No,
I'd leave it open, actually.
You would?
Yeah, I'd leave it open. You can open it. We often find that if we only drink half a bottle, then the next day, it actually tastes even better the next day. And you can keep it for at least 3 or 4 days. There's so much structure in there, it's not going to go off, or it's not going to turn at all. So don't be worried about drinking the whole bottle in one session, shall we say. You can spread it out over a couple of days. And then the other idea on decanting was just tip it, if you haven't opened it, just tip it into a jug, tip it back into the bottle, and that will really help open it up.
And he's saying that the 18, as soon as we receive them, we could drink them, but decanting would be a good idea, I surmise, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Okay, and you know, I've got that argon gas that I spray in. And that depends, I agree, on the depth of the wine. Yours is obviously designed to have that structure. Some of the lighter wines, if you're only going to have a glass, you really should get some argon on top of it right away, right? So, because it can spoil overnight. But
definitely.
But not yours. Yeah. So, in travel program, anybody else have any questions before we let these two? Well, I don't know. You're in France, so you don't go to bed at 10 o'clock, do you?
No, we do actually.
Yeah.
Because we're up. I tell you what we're doing tomorrow morning. We have to get up at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning to go and check the electric fences for the wild boar. So
oh wow.
Yeah,
boy.
It's
really like farming, isn't it?
It is farming. It really
Yes,
is farming. And I never realized that. It's funny you say that, Michael, because I never actually realized that it was farming. And yeah, it's 100% based on farming. So
yeah.
And we've got 8 different electric fences spread out over about 20 kilometers.
And it's working? It's working?
Well, yeah, I hope so. We did have the unfortunate experience a couple of days ago where somebody took the wires off the battery. You know, this village is like, not the whole village, but there's lots of people just doing strange things. And somebody actually unplugged our battery, which could be disastrous, because if we hadn't have found out and gone and put it back on again, then the wild boar would probably get in. So
yeah. And boar are good eating, yes.
Yeah.
What wine would you suggest with wild boar? I would say Fitu.
It has to be Fitu.
That's right.
Fitu was made for wild boar, definitely.
And that rosemary and thyme that they're eating would actually go into the meat as well. So
yeah, and Jean-Marc's mum, Annie, she makes a lovely wild boar stew, and she actually marinates the wild boar for 24 hours in Fitu and then uses that for the sauce. So yeah, no, definitely it goes really, really well. Yeah, we didn't actually say what you could drink the wine with, but it will go really well with wild boar, so any game. And also I really like the Fitu with lamb, so lamb on the barbecue or lamb with a herb crust. So if you've got some herbs, some rosemary, thyme on the lamb, that goes really, really well too. Cheese as well, really delicious.
And Jane and Anna are suggesting braised rabbit in our cellar offering. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. In England, you don't eat a lot of
We don't eat rabbits, no.
Well, this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you both for all of your time. It was wonderful.
Thank you very
as I
much.
said, everybody on the call, that Domaine Jones is the Select Plus producer this year. So you still have time to join the Select Plus program and get this case of 3 wines, 2 bottles of each. It's always really, really good value. And really, I've tried most of the line, and I'm going to order the ones that I haven't tried this year. So
fantastic.
Thank you again. It's wonderful. Thank you. I think you mentioned that we're your great partners in Canada, and you are our great partners in France. So thank you
fantastic.
So very, very much.
It's an absolute honor, and thank you everybody who's joined us tonight and all of the members. And I saw that Barb was on there as well. Hi, Barb. Barb's been down here as well with her husband. So good to see you there. And thanks so much. And please, more of you, please come and see us down in Touchon when you can. We're ready and waiting for you.
Thank you.
Thanks
good
so
evening,
much.
good day, and good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night. Good night, Katie from Les and Kathy.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bill.
Oh, lots of people on here now.
Yeah. Well, that was really interesting, wasn't it?
That was great.
Coming from the vineyard, as if you're in the car.